Welcome to Churches Canceled. I'm your co-host, Juan Eldridge, in no way related to Christian author who tries to write about masculinity, John Eldridge, joined by my co-host, Middle G.
That's
What
right.
up, Middle G?
I'm not the top G, but I'm almost there. I'm climbing that G ladder. Yeah. Today we have a very interesting subject for you. Last week we were talking about Hillsong. So today we are discussing masculinity. This is a subject that is fraught with a lot of pitfalls. I'm just going to say at the outset of this, my goal is a reverse Bechdel test. So the Bechdel test is what progressives apply to any form of media in which in order to pass the Bechdel test, two women must have a piece of dialogue that has nothing to do with a man. So the reverse Bechdel that we're trying to pass here is two men are going to have a conversation, and I'm not interested in excoriating the women's movement, feminism, women. I don't care about any of that. That's irrelevant to the subject, I think. Is that fair to you to say?
Well, yeah, I mean, we could talk about that for a long time, but that's not what we want to do.
So I'll say this much. There is plenty of red pill, MGTOW, manosphere, all of that stuff already exists out there. And so I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it already exists. So what I'm interested in discussing is men, masculinity, well, boys, men, masculinity, and the context of church and how, hey, it's called Churches Canceled. I think I'm going to take a piss today on this subject because it's one that really does, out of a lot of subjects when it comes to church, this is one that really chaps my hide.
Yes.
So
I really agree. We have a lot to say about this.
We do.
We most certainly will be canceled by the time we're done. It will probably be called toxic masculine.
All right, well, if we're going to be called toxic,
fuck it. We're going all the way.
Yeah.
Fuck it. Is this toxic enough for you? Is this masculine enough for you, Danny?
All right. Yeah, there we go. All right. Oh.
Fuck it.
All right.
What could be more masculine?
Bert Kreischer.
Oh, and
he has a beer
episode.
Is that a Stella Artois?
Yeah, what the fuck's wrong with the Stella?
I don't know.
It's kind of a feminine beer for a masculine moment. It really took away a lot from that, but
okay.
It's so crisp and light. How can you disagree with it?
You just described the problem with the beer. If the beer doesn't leave you bloated and sick, it's not masculine enough. So this.
How about? Oh yeah, show my toxic masculinity.
Leave your nips out of this, please. So today we actually don't have a. You don't have a.
I don't have a church cliche. No.
But we do. Interestingly enough, somebody emailed us blessings@churchescancel.com. They emailed us a request for advice. So I guess that's going to be a new segment here. If you want us to give you advice, you can just email us. It's actually Osteen@churchescancel. It's still blessings. That was a joke. But so today, hold on, let me just pull something, make sure I have those. Okay, Kenny. It's from Kenny. Kenny says, I am part of a men's group at my church. I'm 21, and I've
kind of men's group? I'm curious.
He says a men's accountability group. That's what.
Okay.
He says that later in the thing. And a part of this men's group, we have accountability partners in my accountability group. So I have Covenant Eyes on my phone or my laptop, and I have stopped looking at any inappropriate images or videos. However, there is now a debate and a controversy because I do see a lot of content that is women's fitness content, also women getting chiropractic adjustments.
What?
Okay. And my accountability partners believe that this qualifies as something immoral and inappropriate. What do you think?
Oh, wow. The chiropractic adjustments part or the...
I mean, are you thinking of going to chiropractic school? Because that to me seems like an out.
Perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Did he say, is he wanking it or not to the chiropractic adjustment videos?
He did not. He did not offer that piece of information, but
That's
let's
key,
just
man. That's
presume
key.
he is. Let's
That's
just
key.
presume. I mean, listen. Sometimes when they adjust that upper thoracic, I just get a little.
Danny, the Bible, I think the Bible is clear on this subject.
Okay.
The Bible says that any man who looks at a woman getting a chiropractic adjustment with lust in his eye has already committed adultery in his heart. It's right there.
Okay, but hold on. He does
in plain
say
English that wasn't originally written in English.
Right. But he does include in here that sometimes it's not even a chiropractor, it's an osteopath.
I don't even know what that is.
Okay, well, it's actually a medical doctor that does chiropractic adjustments. They can, anyways. So there's
Are you drinking out of a vase?
Yeah.
A vase? Did you just take the flowers out of that and just drink the leftover water?
Yeah, it's healthy for you. So the assessment here, Kenny, is one of us says that this is unbiblical. I'm going to go with, if everybody's wearing their clothes, if you don't have to click yes, I'm above 18 before you enter the thing, I think you're fine. Yeah.
Kenny, I'm sorry, but if you're fapping to this, it's game over for you, man. You violated the trust of the accountability group.
Well, I mean, I think he hasn't violated the trust of the accountability group because he's openly saying, I like when Dr. Cipriani cracks her brack. So, I mean, you know. All right. So,
well, I know. Good luck to you, Kenny. Either way.
That's all I can tell you, Kenny. Good luck to you, brother.
God bless.
So,
thanks for writing in.
Right. This subject to me became interesting or meaningful because we are the rise of people like Dr. Jordan Peterson, who I believe is a completely neutral figure. And all he attempted to do, I believe, and has attempted to do, whether we care for it or not, is speak to a group of lost young men. And he was excoriated, canceled, thrown out. This guy has sold millions of copies of his book, 12 Rules, and is not included on the New York Times bestseller list because he technically is Canadian. that is the technicality. They said even though there are other Canadian authors with books on the NY.
Justin Bieber got on the the American Hot 100 or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
He's Canadian.
Right. So, and that kind of bled into or fed into the rise of this guy named Andrew Tate. Everyone has a lot of scary opinions, or we're all offended by him. I think he said a lot of positive and meaningful stuff. How does that all relate to church? Simple. There are figures from outside of what is Christendom, right? Andrew Tate says he converted to Islam before he went to prison. I don't know. I don't think that Dr. Peterson is Christian. He says that he likes the Bible, but anytime he's walked into a church, he always said anytime anybody was talking, I always thought they were faking it or they were lying. That's what he says, his words. So there is all of these. There are influences outside of the church that have captured the attention of the minds of young men. And that presents this situation where I see church pastors and other people responding on the internet in the most cringy way possible because they're losing the game. And part of the game, I think, here is why they're losing is if you look at how church talks about masculinity if you're a young man, you're 18, 19 years old, you walk into a church and the church tells you your penis makes you evil. Your penis makes you sinful. You're a piece of garbage because you're horny. Yeah. And he looks at the world and he goes out and looks at society. Well, society tells him the same thing effectively, right? You're garbage because your dick works. And I have been in church my whole life, And
there's no differentiation anymore between masculinity and toxic masculinity. So if you're
right,
born with a penis, you're almost inherently toxic. Here's Healthline's definition of toxic masculinity. They say it may include themes of mental and physical toughness,
okay,
aggression,
right.
stoicism or not displaying emotion, heterosexism or discrimination against people who aren't heterosexual, self-sufficiency, God forbid you rely on yourself, and emotional insensitivity. There's
What they
just no
just
differentiation anymore.
what they've just described here um, is a boss babe. Like that's just what they
That is
described
a
is
boss,
like,
a boss, a boss bitch.
yeah,
Babe,
like
you were trying
I
to go
don't
with that.
need no man. I'm
Right.
independent. I just
Yeah.
need like welfare and
Self-sufficient.
Section 8. Yeah.
Mhm.
So there's a bunch of articles that I've pulled here. I just pulled two that I love because one is from Harper's Bazaar, one is National Post.
Yeah.
And I love these articles, and they're maybe 5, 6 years old, but they came out around the same time. And here's why I love them. One says that male friendships are too close, bromances are too close, and they're going to be
Yeah.
toxic for women. Okay,
Because the men will rely on each other emotionally, so
correct,
the women will just be a sex object.
right, and I'm fine with that. I actually think that is
I mean,
closer to
we had a bromance, still do, and I
still
view
do.
you as a sex object too. So you
Well,
fulfill every need that I have, quite frankly.
put your shirt back on. I'm gonna have to spend hours in editing, blurring out your erect nipples.
They're not even on camera.
I know. And there's this other article from Harper's Bazaar that says men don't have close, and they use studies, and
Right.
they cite experts who are doctors in their field, and they're saying that men don't have friends, and so women bear the emotional responsibility of in relationships, and
And that
it's
men are
too much.
emotionally exhausting to women. Yeah.
Correct. So I use these two competing articles for a reason. In the world, and now, unfortunately, within the context of church, there's only two frames or modes of masculinity. It's either toxic or fragile. There is no the healthiest way to be a man is to either tuck your dick back, which is to duct tape it like the people who are reading your children's stories at their public school do in their library. That's literally where the practice comes from. Your options are to tuck it back, be feminine, wear skinny jeans, grow your hair out, ride a bicycle everywhere, or take an electric car that you pool with 6 other people, or you're toxic. There's no middle ground.
Are you saying the church says this, or society at large?
Society at large says this, and the church is passive at best, or in my experience, which is only my experience, but I would also say anecdotally, there is it is the same in church, right? And one of my notes that I wrote down here, one of my points that I wrote down was that, our generation, the millennials and younger, will be the first generation of people, men included, to live a lower standard of living than our parents in the macro.
Yeah.
Whatever the conditions of that, however we arrived here, to me, that's irrelevant. The reality is that's the reality. And within the context of church, what I'm seeing is, and this is something I've experienced more than once, is boomer and Gen X leaders uninterested in hearing about it, but at the same time, they want to grow a community, they want to be supportive. But if, like, I remember I had a guy who calls himself a pastor give me a nice lecture on dating single moms and why I should do it. And I'm like, I just don't do that, right? For a handful of reasons. And I
wouldn't date them, but that's all I would do.
Right.
Dating's as far as that's gonna go.
Well, dating in quotes, right? We all know what you mean, but you're married now, so that's irrelevant. The
That's
number
right.
of times I've gone to hang out with him, and then I end up watching some girl's kid while they disappear to go look for a wrench in the tool shed for an hour and a half.
It was important that we found that wrench. We wouldn't have fixed the thing that was broken without
You
it.
fixed nothing. After 15 minutes, I left. I don't even know what happened to that kid. But the reason I bring that example up is the church has, I would say, the Protestant church. If you're Protestant, there is very little room for a young man to go somewhere where he can express himself emotionally without being clinicalized or pathologized, or like he has to be like an ardent feminist. He doesn't really have a choice where he can go to a Protestant church and walk in, explain his feelings, get a hug from somebody, get support, and still be like, yeah, I want to drive a pickup truck and have a shotgun and be a normal guy. His options are he has to go to a church where he can't have feelings, where they're probably all holding hands thinking that the second coming is imminent. And he probably is one of those holding signs protesting other churches and comedians and like, God hates fig growers or whatever. Yeah. Or his other option is he has to go to a church where he has to emasculate himself to conform to the image of the church. And emasculation starts anywhere from you should date a single mother to you should like, why aren't you getting married, and tucking your balls back and tucking your polo in over your tucked back Ken balls, and Ken being the Ken doll, but you know, smooth.
So I would say this. You said that men can't express their emotions in the church, and I would say it's slightly different.
Okay.
Men are allowed to express their emotions within the church, but the methods that are allowed to be seen visibly of expression are very specific. If you're going to express anything in church as a man, it should be love for God. It should be hands up in the air, I'm worshiping.
Okay.
If you're going to express any emotions towards women, it should be I'm here to care and protect. And if you're single, you should be a friend, a good, safe friend.
Right.
And probably strive to be married, like you said. And if you're married, you should be a protector and a provider and a leader. And so it's all defined for you. It's not that men aren't allowed to express themselves. It's that you have this very specific way that you're allowed to express yourself. And if you express anything beyond that, it's likely not going to be acceptable. I think the church, again, just speaking from my experience, is getting better. It's getting better at dealing with mental health. Back when I got heavily into Pentecostal church, I think the Pentecostals are some of the worst when it comes to mental health, because they're just like, you can pray and if you have the Holy Spirit, it'll get better. But I think at large now, what I'm seeing is it's different. The church I go to now, if you have mental health issues, you can meet for free with a pastor who will connect you with licensed therapists, counselors, whoever, that you can hopefully have insurance to pay for or whatever. So I've seen an improvement over time, but still I think within the context of church, as a man, it's very limited how you can express yourself.
Yeah. And, I included this other article I thought it'd be interesting for us to touch on briefly. There was a lesbian woman who's no longer on this planet. She took herself out of contention medically. And she embarked on initially was supposed to be 2 years. I think she only went 18 months. And she posed as a man and lived as a man. And she believed what would happen in that process was that life would get easier. And she went into it with all sorts of feminine ideas of what masculinity and manhood is. And she came out on the other end really screwed up and said, this is so hard. And this is impossible. They're hurting. They don't have a good outlet to express themselves. On my Instagram, this is posted 3 or 4 weeks maybe after it's recorded, but I had posted several videos because I was thinking about this subject, and it's several times, and these are clips on the internet, so they're anecdotal, but men are expressing their emotions, and there's a woman sitting next to them telling them, meh, whatever. So we have this weird thing that we're seeing in society where on the one hand, feminists are telling men you should men. They're making the accusation that men are incapable of expressing their emotions, and they're incapable of having a wide berth of emotions. And then men turn around with all this emotional intelligence and express their emotions, and then some chick near them goes, "Stop! Nobody cares." And here's the reality. And here's, as much as this is about dumping on the church's poor dealing with young men, I will add this. It's just the way it is, bud. Like, this is a piece of advice. Here's what I've realized. When I am going through something, I'm not calling a pastor to church. I have 3 friends who I can, and Brett is one of them, where I'll just be like, I'm going through it, whatever. And we'll talk, and usually, we'll get through it. I'll get through it that way. And that's probably where life is going to be for most dudes. And this one article points out that the bromance is such a threat to women because men are realizing that. And in this article, they say that the young men that they interviewed for this study said that no, I can just talk to my male friends without the concern of like they're going to judge me or that I'm going to be whatever. And in the context of church, what I've realized is you have to look at that man's relationship with, like, if he has a wife that is, we all have those friends who we love the guy and we're like, why did he pick this chick? She ruins everything. And if that's your friend, you have to find a new one now because he has to, and this is where I think a lot of pastors and youth pastors are in the grinder. They're stuck. They can't do anything to help young men at their churches because they are this guy that I'm talking about. They're this emasculated man whose wife controls, or the woman in their life kind of sets the tone for how they live. And this has become the Christian position. And that's where this is, church is canceled. The Christian position has become man as the head of the household. That's biblical. But we have this new, and this is all over. Well, the woman is the neck. She's turning the head. That's not in the Bible, bro. You know what is in the Bible? It is better to live on the roof of your house than with a quarrelsome woman in a beautiful home. Right. So as far back as the Old Testament, this is a reality for men, is that like they put it in the book that there is a harpy. Your homie's going to be married to a harpy. And so I'm just saying that in the context of church, the reason I don't think there is a support system where, and I'll compare it to something because that's the only fair way to do this, I think. I go to a huge church. A Saturday service draws 4,000 people at one campus. There's, 6 or 7 campuses. It's huge. There is a single mother support group. There's a group for single mothers who have car trouble and guys go over and try to fix their cars. There is a divorce support group, but it's mostly for the women going through a divorce. I look at all the different groups that my church has, and I'm grateful that they have them, right? I'm not angry that they have them, and I'm not like, then we're going to change the system, because we're not. It just is the way it is. Here's the reality. It would take nothing for them to go, oh, we have 2 generations of men in our community. In Dallas-Fort Worth, there's 2 generations of young men aged 25 to aged 18 to 40 who are facing the barrel of, they're going to live a lower standard of living. There's inflation, all these bad things. They're not going to get married. Statistically, there's a statistic that a bank came up with for its investors, and it said something like, I'll include it in our show notes.
45% of women aged 25 to 44 will be unmarried by the year 2030.
Unmarried and childless was actually their actual term. Now, the reason that is pertinent to this dialogue is the other side of that coin. right? If they're unmarried and childless, that means most of the dudes are going to be unmarried and childless. And churches have done a fantastic job of building support systems for women. And they've built they've built palaces to women. And there was only one guy in my lifetime, one pastor, who took up the mantle of young men, and that was Mark Driscoll.
Well, churches have support groups for men, but what they're focused on is like our person who wrote in, Kenny. They're
right,
focused on purity. They're accountability
right.
groups. So they're not really support groups. They're
Right,
accountability, or they're limit based. So these
right,
groups that we have for men are more about, you're going to get a accountability group that's going to tell you you can't wank your pee-pee if you're not married.
right,
Where you're gonna get guys who are gonna be in a group like churches have all these man camps, right? The church that I was attending had a man camp, and all the dudes are like, yeah, bro, we're going to fucking man camp. I'm like, I'm not gonna spend a weekend with
right.
a bunch of other guys with some other guy telling me how I'm supposed to be a man. If you have to do that, you have a serious problem on your hands. And
Right,
that's what it is. This is what churches do. They're feminine 85, 90% of the time. The worship service is feminine. The experience is feminine. They only
right,
have support groups for women. And then one fucking weekend out of a year, guys get to go pretend that they possess their own nut sacks. And
right.
this is not working.
No, and it's that one weekend where, and then when he comes back from that weekend, he's not just mowing the lawn; he's doing the dishes. You were gone. He's cooking. I know a guy who is
Yeah,
married.
it's do more. What guys in the church get told is do more. You're the leader. You need to step up. You need to
Right.
suck it up. You need to do more. You need to lead the way. That's not helping. That's not supportive.
Well, not just that. I know a guy who, a Christian guy who's married, who has a stay-at-home wife, but he does all the cooking and cleaning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand that. Like the thought that he wouldn't do that to not just his wife, it's the people around him. They would say there isn't a man that would defend him in front of his church group. No, there is no man to come to his aid. He's just out in the he's just exposed out in the open with his nip in the air, saying, I don't have a choice. I have to clean the house. I have to do the cooking. I have to look after the kids when I get home from work. What kind of life is that for a person? Before we continue, I think we should do our ad, and then we will pick up this conversation. Hopefully, we'll get to some more of these points before we're done. We are excited.
So excited.
We are brought to you by Hilltop Worship Supplements. Hilltop Worship Supplements are a pre-worship or pre-workout, if you will, supplement to really get you amped up for that worship service. Brett, tell us a little bit about Hilltop and how it works. You're our in-house fitness guy.
Yeah, Hilltop Worship Supplements. If you've taken a pre-workout before, you'll have a similar experience with Hilltop Worship Supplements.
Okay.
When you take this powder, you can mix it in with any kind of liquid. Drink it before your worship service.
Actually, the instructions for the ad read here say they're not supposed to mix it in with water.
Oh.
Because only non-Christians use water, because we have living water. We don't need regular water. But the powder just goes straight up the nose.
Just snort it. Snort it.
That's right.
And then you'll be ready to fucking worship.
That's right.
That's what it says on the label. I didn't make that up.
No,
it says
he didn't.
That.
It
They're
actually
really
says
progressive.
that.
They're progressive over at Hilltop Worship Supplements.
Yeah.
But what it does is it helps saturate your body with the vitamins and supplements that it needs to receive the saturation of the spirit, so that Jesus can really come on you when you start worshiping. And now Hilltop Worship Supplements promises an experience, a worship experience unlike any other.
Okay. Well, you can use our code CIC20 for 20% off your subscription order. Today, that code is valid through the end of March. That is CIC20. That is Hilltop Worship Supplements.ai. All right. Now back to the show.
What is .ai? You always say.
I don't know. It's just a fake TLD. Like they couldn't get .com, so they had to be .ai.
I hope we have a fan out there somewhere who like listens to all of our ads and then designs fake websites to make it look like the web pages you reference all the time. I would pay that person.
Yeah, you would. All right, let's log back in.
All right.
So I don't know where we left off, but I think you had some thoughts, Johnny.
Yeah, I'm Johnny Eldridge here. This is a reference to popular Christian author John Eldridge, who writes about kind of restoring masculinity for men in the church. Some pastor at some point told me to read one of his books, and I did, and I thought it was stupid.
Okay.
He basically says the way that you can become a man again as a Christian is by being in nature. If you rock climb and fish and hunt and spend some time outside, you'll become a man again. So
really?
I thought that was dumb.
I always thought of myself as quite the indoorsman, you know?
Yeah, what do you do if you like to have clean fingernails like Danny does? He paints his, so.
That is not true. I buff them. There's not paint. So
that's the solution, right? The church does try to solve this problem sometimes, right? They give you John Eldridge, who writes a book who tells you how to be a man again. They give you man camp one time a year where you get to pretend that your nuts aren't in your wife's purse.
Correct.
They try, but they are the problem. They are a part of the problem. And I think a big part of the problem here is how the church deals with sex and dating.
Okay.
A couple of the articles that we reference in the notes, there are women in the church complaining that men don't ask them out.
Yeah.
There are men saying that they are not interested in dating Christian women, which I can relate to. I went to Bible college and I did not date a single woman from the Bible college the entire 4 years I was there. And it was like just a thing you knew going in. Like dudes who were kind of savvy were like, bro, do not date anyone here. They're all going to try to marry you. And they're all nuts. And why would I want to date or even marry a woman who she makes life decisions like where she's going to to start her job, her career, her first job based on what God whispered to her in a dream. This is not a stable person. We're not interested in dating this kind of person.
No, listen, I have no problem with that, right? That doesn't really hurt my feelings that much. But here's where I will tell you the stark reality, right? And there's all of this secular data to back this up. The chicks are out there getting absolutely plowed, right? That's the data. That's the data.
Are we talking about in the church?
I'm talking about the secular data, okay? Mm-hmm. And the dudes aren't. And there's all of these milestones.
Well, dudes shouldn't be getting plowed unless they're dudes who like to plow.
What I mean to say, though, in that context is like the young men are not getting their pee-pee touched as much as the women are. And the reason that is important in the context of the church and this conversation is I'm aware of situations in which people are sexually unequally yoked because the chick has been out there getting ran through, but the dude has never seen a nip in his entire life other than his own. And what I've seen from church leadership repeatedly is this need to launder a young woman's poor choices. Because in my experience, here's the reality of church girls, right? Church women, and one of these articles actually said that, which is like, well, I want a Christian man who's also worldly. One of them quoted, that was the quote, like, The phrase was worldly wise. And here's what that means. There's all these videos on YouTube and TikTok and other places where you can go and you can watch these men on the street videos. And they do these hilarious they're kind of these red pill guys. So they do these back-to-back things where they ask a girl, do you want to date a guy who's never been with a woman? Or marry a guy and they say no. Or do you want, like, here are your choices, a virgin or a player? Like, he's plowed a ton of chicks. And they're like, oh, yeah, clearly the player. Then you ask the dudes, and they have the inverted response. Right. And the reality is, church or no church, what's happening in my experience is that girls are going out there and living it up, and then they come back to church, or Saturday night they're living it up, and Sunday morning they're in service. And church is doing a great job of laundering their poor choices and saying, the best way to help this young woman is to stick her under a dude. And what ends up happening, and this is the statistic, church or no church, 50% of marriages end in divorce. Anywhere to 70% up of those divorces are initiated by women. And I've watched dudes who get cheated on go to church for help, and they just go, maybe you should vacuum up more. Like, no, like that is not. There's unfortunately, and here's why I think that's the case. That's their customer. And I'm a capitalist. I believe in capitalism and free markets. I have no problem with people trying to make money. I have a problem when people pretend like they're not doing something to make money.
Right.
Like anytime a corporation's like, we're a family here. Shut up. No. We are not a family here. We're here to make money. Let's all do our job and go home. I don't want to go hang out with these people. They're not my friends. I'm here to work and then go home. Similarly to church, I'm here to build a community with people. Why are we pretending like no? Here's the reality.
About money.
I have no problem with people getting rich. I have no problem with rich people going to church. I don't think there's an incongruence to having earthly wealth and being a faithful Christian. The reality, though, is that the majority of churches are packed with chicks. And if they start to really sear the women, the young women, and say, you're making bad choices. You can't be if you want to have a family, you can't be out here racking up 100 bodies and then walking into church and then expecting some dude to marry you. And here's the reality. It doesn't matter how hard church tries. Sure, they're going to dupe a handful of guys into that ecosystem, and I've watched it happen to my horror. And I pointed that out, and I remember pointing that out, and I got pulled aside, and I this has happened. A church leader pulled me aside and said, listen, that young lady has been through the ringer. She used to live with a guy. She had a bunch of boyfriends. If this might be her only chance at having a normal life. And it's like, I simply asked, why is this good for that guy? Why is this a good match for that guy? And the response I got was nothing to do with the dude, everything to do with this young lady has experienced rough situations that she put herself in. I'm the ultimate feminist. If you want to make bad choices, God bless you. Go make them. I'm not. But if they consequences of my actions, how dare? That is unfair in so many ways. And so I see that.
Let's go back to how the church handles it, because there is a difference. That's on the back end. Choices have been made. Things have happened.
Correct.
We need to support this woman. We need to heal her. We need to help her.
Right.
On the front end of it, this is how guys are taught. This was my experience. You're going to have a night at church where they're going to talk about purity. They actually, what they'll do, they split it up. All the girls will go in one place. All the guys will go in another.
Right.
And you'll talk about sexual purity, which is just abstinence until marriage. I remember being in a group where they talked about purity, and our youth leader, who we both know very well.
Okay.
I don't know if you'll know who I'm talking about, but you'll know who this. You know them. We both spend a lot of time with this guy. Okay. He was a leader at this purity night, and he said, if you can't keep from touching your ding dong, just duct tape it. Just put some tape around the shaft, just the shaft, because you got to be able to go to the restroom. That way, you won't want to jerk it; it'll be uncomfortable. And I had no better. I was so naive in the church at the time, and I was having troubles not touching it, and so that's what I did. And
You?
yeah, I actually did this, and it doesn't work, by the way. You can still
Yeah,
get
it
in
might
there and
not
have a
work
good
on
time.
your piece. I've seen your hog. I don't. Did you use an entire roll of duct tape? Um, so
So this is how men are treated on the front end. Don't even think about it. Don't even go there. It's
right,
demonized. It's all bad until you're married. So
right.
marriage is the only goal. There's no dating. There's nothing in between. So no wonder the church is 60-40, women like a female to male now, and women are saying, guys don't come up to me. They don't want to date me because we're not taught. The church does nothing to teach you about like how to date. There's nothing there. They keep talking about marriage the whole time. They talk about singleness as if it's the fucking plague,
Right.
and you get nothing in between.
Yeah. So, and that is an interesting anecdote. And the reason that's interesting is what I hear from women about purity culture is how, and none of them have ever addressed this correctly, which is they split us up. So, how do you know what they're telling the dudes? They're just like, they in their mind, they're telling the dudes, like, so what you want to do is you want to lube it and angle yourself right. That's not what's happening. There is unending condemnation of your dick, off rip. That's been my experience always going to church. And whenever I heard people talk like that, I never had that moment of conviction. I never had that moment of anything. All I ever thought was, must be sad at that guy's house. Like, all I ever thought was, that guy's life must suck. Because, and listen, there's a lot of secular data that backs up the notion that fewer or single partners makes you have a happier marriage, a better sex life, all of that stuff. That's neither here nor there. So that's, I'm just saying, like, that is not wrong. But the way that the church that I've ever experienced them address this issue when it comes to me as a single dude is always like, you have two options. You are either going to take one of these women and fix their life for them by marrying them, or you're going into vocational ministry and we're sending you to the Congo. And and it's literally been that bifurcation of like, you have two choices here as a man. You can choose the route of celibacy and vocational ministry, or you have to get married. And here are your kind of, and listen, I'm not, and I should have said at the outset of this, I'm not angry. I'm actually really not. I'm not jaded when it comes to dating. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I find it hysterical, the kinds of women I have access to. I'm 5'7". I can only buy clothes from the Big and Tall and from Amazon. If I put my pant size into the Amazon search bar, the first thing that comes up is shower curtain. So that's honestly that statement. And I frequent, like, I would say 7s and up, right? That's like where so like, and I'm not saying that to brag, and I'm certain.
Yeah, but you're funny. You're funny. If you weren't funny, it'd be 4s and below.
Dude, I don't know if they would have teeth, but what I'm saying is like,
hey, it's not a bad thing. You know,
well, okay, in one situation. But what the reason I bring that up is to say, like, I can't even express a sense of standards, boundaries, desires, any of that without a woman saying, "Who hurt you?"
Yeah.
You're just saying this to be hurtful.
The fact that you just said 7s and up, so you would get that response. I can't believe you would look at women and put them on a rating scale.
Or any of that, right? And so I'm just saying, like, my experience has been, if I express any of these views or thoughts to a general group, like, because because there was that church that you came with me to, that singles event at that church. Do you remember? In Austin.
Sure.
Yeah, and I remember that.
Is that where you did the kick over my head?
No, that was at Austin Stone. That was long before that. Yeah. So I went to the singles event at a church, and I just remember, like, the women go have their breakout session, and they have this deeply emotional, like, healing thing, and the guys get yelled at for, why aren't you manning up and marrying these? Listen,
do better. It's just a do better speech.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like, here's the reality. the women there, nice women, love Jesus. They're good people. If you could throw a rock at any of them and hit a minimum of $50,000 in student loan debt, what do you want me to do? Like, these are like in 2008, these are the women who are buying $500,000 houses, right?
Yeah.
They got FICO scores at 550, 300, like 30, 40, $50,000 in debt. They're driving a Lexus. They got a Birkin bag that they throw on their Capital One.
We discovered the reason for the crash in 08 right here. Church girls.
No, but really, like, there has been no accountability for them on their side. And the expectation is simply that.
I don't know. I was never in the women's purity meetings, though. I don't know what they talked about.
Well, the women's purity meetings, if you read the internet of post-Christian women, they'll tell you that the men were over there learning how to yank it, and the women were over here saying, stop wearing short skirts and tight pants because you're riling up the guys. And to which I would say,
well, the problem I see from the women's side of the purity movement within church is that the church puts the pussy on the pedestal. They put the pussy on the pedestal, right? They say you're valuable, you're precious. So don't let any man any man soil you. Wait for you're a queen. Wait for your king, and your king will treat you right. But so don't be just showing off your goods for any of these peasants over there who are jerking it to Nick at night. So you've got to take care of yourself. And what they're doing is they're putting the pussy on the pedestal. They're telling these women that they're valuable simply because they're a woman. They're telling these women that they're to be sought after and that every guy over in that man's purity meeting is going to want to marry them. So they're all confused and frustrated when the church becomes 60% female, 40 male, and no guy wants to ask him out on a date, because we were all told that if we even think lustful thoughts about a woman, we're fucking going to hell. We're scared to ask these women out because I'm afraid if I take her on a date, I'm going to see her titty fall out, and I'm done right there. I'm going to hell.
No, my experience has been this. Like, I am familiar with women who will meet dudes at church, sleep with them, but then say, well, the only reason I feel comfortable sleeping with you is because I know, like, you're a man of good character, but I'm interested in this other guy. And this is coming from a very credible source, right? This guy had that happen to him several times, where they would sleep with him and then say, well, I'm interested in this other guy, but if I give it up to that dude, he won't respect me. So they already know that there's like there's a dynamic here. And they're like, oh no, but like I'm like I asked that person, like, so what do they think is going to happen if they actually get that guy? They're gonna be like, oh, that was in my past. It's all forgiven. I was like, but it was 2 minutes ago. Like, you guys drove separately to church from your apartment. Like, but that is a real situation. And so I guess I had a personal situation like this at the church we went to in Austin, Texas. Not like what you're describing, but earlier you mentioned how the woman gets all the forgiveness and we need to help her and blah, blah, blah. I was dating a girl at the church we attended. You remember this. I was dating this girl. And I expressed emotions to her like we're supposed to as men. And she basically told me to man up, and she didn't want to hear that shit. Right.
We broke up. Other not so great things happened. Words were exchanged. Basically, the whole church took her side.
Of course.
The pastor called me to basically offer, I don't know, pastoral correction.
Okay.
I was, of course, in the wrong by default.
Of course.
She was in the right, and then I got told to read a John Eldridge book.
Is that they told you to read a John? That's surprising. So let me just say to that, like, I have watched so many situations where the dude is, where the man is actually in the right. He's correct, but the church takes the woman's side. And
I'm not saying I was in the right in this situation. I had my part to play, but
you were in the wrong for one reason. You told the truth. You said your feelings out loud to a woman. Now, to kind of land the plane here, I'm going to do something we've probably never done on the show before. I'm going to offer my opinions that I would say are quote unquote advice, right?
Oh boy.
Okay. So here's what I would say if you're a young man and you love Jesus and you want to be as Christian as possible, don't look to any church to provide you with any sort of support. Now, the reason I say that is they're going to lie to you. Like they're simply just, and this has been my experience at multiple churches in multiple states, different denominations. It has simply been that there's only one guy who ever, like I was mentioning before our break, there's only one pastor who ever said something like, which was Mark Driscoll. And even recently he was doing an interview with Steven Crowder, who's also he's a hoe, but he said something along the lines of like, yeah, like it's really rough out there. You're going to have to pick a lot slower. You're going to have to be pickier. You're going to, and that is the only time I've ever heard that advice from a pastor. None of my pastors have ever given me that advice. They've all been like, just pick one. They're all the same. And that is the dumbest advice. If you want to be married and have children and you live outside of one of the 17 states like Texas, Tennessee, I think Florida might be one of them. I don't know. That are states that have not mutual combat laws. That's fun. That's just fun. That's just plain fun. But that have common law marriage laws. You may be in a situation where it is best for you to find a woman and say, listen, we can have the ceremony, but we're never legally going to be married. Because that's just going to put you in a position of like, she has to stay because she likes you. And if she's leaving because you're a bad person or you did something wrong or she has a legitimate reason. She can't just leave, take half your stuff, and keep getting paid for the rest of her life because you were legally never married. Now, if you're in one of those states where you do have common law marriage, we actually have a consulting practice, the two of us, and what we do is we will set you up with another man. And so what you're going to do is before your wedding to your wife, you're going to go, and it's some people might use the F word, fraud, when they refer to this, but
I would disagree.
Yeah, so would I. This is perfectly legal, sort of. What you do is you go and you have in the mortgage industry leading up to the crisis of 2008, people would shotgun a mortgage, and what that means was you'd get 4 mortgages on one property, and you do it in succession to one another. So by the time these mortgages are recorded, there is, it's too late. You have too many mortgages, right? So what we're going to do is we'll set you up with a dude. You guys are going to go through your assets, and you guys are going to shake hands. We will perform a wedding ceremony, so it's legal. So you guys don't have to kiss each other. Basically, all we're going to do is sign some papers. And then the next day, you're going to go and marry your wife, and here's what's going to happen. 10 years from now, though, those are the statistics just about when she goes to file for divorce, she's going to find out she's not entitled to any of your stuff because legally your marriage is invalid because you were married to Dave. Right. And so
Middle G and I are married. My wife doesn't even know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, well, she's going to find out now. But here's the thing. I don't believe in complaining about the system. I don't believe in we're going to change it. Like if you want to go protest on Washington, good for you. But 2 years ago, a bunch of people did that. Look what it got them. Nothing.
Federal prison sentences.
Correct. And the next thing I'm going to say is for young men, pursue strength in everything that you do. And the reason that's intentionally open-ended is not to be Rob Bell about this and be subjective and like strength could mean anything. No, but here's what I mean. If you view strength as going to the gym and being physically strong, go do that because you need because when you start with, and I'm in that like boat stop being fat. I read a whole book about it. Not just because it's gross, it's because you should be strong. And if that's financial strength, whatever you view as being strong, whatever you think of, like when I say you should be strong and your first thought is, I need to go buy a cabin in the woods go do that. Pursue that strength, whatever that means, in everything you do. And when it comes to, and that's the only thing I can say is, and when it comes to the church, what should the church do? Simple. Sponsor programs that help your high school boys find careers, and whether that's helping them get into programs where it's coding, because there's coding camps, sponsoring those, spending the money, investing in your community. God forbid you'd invest some money into your community, right? Hey, I'm just going to throw this out there. Maybe it's a better investment investing in your young men versus building another auditorium for $8 or 10 or $20 million. I'm not offended by big buildings. You should have big buildings. They should be beautiful. But I think that investing in your community is important, and that includes the boys. Hey, just throwing this out there. Boys are people too. They're deserving of the support. And listen, there is a perennial shortage. There is always a shortage of plumbers, diesel mechanics, AC repair guys, electricians, and so on. There's always a shortage in the trades. And there are inexpensive programs in your area, wherever it is that your church is, that you can go and sponsor these programs, and you can figure out the boys who are, maybe they're not the most deserving. And let me tell you something. The ones who are the most rambunctious, the ones who are most problematic, in quotes, whatever, but they keep showing up to church, those are the young men to invest in. Because the ones who are passive and go along to get along and have the skinny jeans and whatever, they aren't leader quality dudes. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're hunter-gatherer types. That's fine. If you want a real pioneer, though, and you have a guy who keeps showing, because I was that kid. I was that guy. I'm still that guy who's viewed as controversial. I say things like, I was out on lunch with somebody and they're like, man, I can't with you, man. You keep saying this stuff, but they're laughing and they know what I'm saying is true. So what do you want me to say or do here? But if they keep showing up, it means that their heart is for God. And if there isn't any intervention from their church to help them matriculate into manhood, let me tell you what will happen. The unfortunate reality is that young man will realize that the church doesn't care about me, because you don't. And they're going to go get influenced. They're going to find someone else to pastor them. But it's not going to be a Christian person. It's going to be Andrew Tate. And here's the interesting thing. Andrew Tate's reach cannot be underestimated or misunderstood here. There are teachers' unions throughout the United Kingdom and the U.S. that are saying that Andrew Tate has influenced their students to the point where they're telling the female teachers, "Shut up! What color is your Bugatti?" Now, I have, and this is a little anecdote. I'll close on, and you can finish whatever you have to say, Brett. I was at the gym not too long ago, and I saw some boys who were, I don't know, too young to drive. Let's just say that. And I had my headphones on, and I'm going to the bathroom. I took my headphones off, and so I didn't have my headphones on. And they're over on the squat rack. And I was just happy to see that there's 3 or 4 boys, and they're messing with each other, whatever, talking crap, and they're being boys. And a girl comes over, I presume from their school, because it looked like they knew each other. I didn't really hear what she said. And one of the boys tells her, "Shut up, you dumb whatever. Get out of here. Me and the boys are lifting." I looked at that and went, the kids are going to be just fine, right? And I can only attribute that reaction to Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate, and I have 2 nephews who are teenagers, and both of them, I was with them last summer at a family thing, and both of them were like, "Dude, do you know who Andrew Tate is?" He's like this. And so when I see that, here's the stark reality you have to deal with. The church is telling you, the church and the secular world is telling young men, here's the message that they're offering young men. You're garbage, you're toxic because you're a penis, and you're never going to amount to anything. Statistically, that's probably true, and you're never going to have anything worth having. Andrew Tate, on the other hand, is telling them, build yourself up, become strong, take action, become something, be of value, be a strong person, have good stuff. He is encouraging them on a level which church isn't doing. So if you're a young man and you find a church that encourages you that way, God bless. But if your church doesn't do that, don't worry about it. You can't fix them, right? Your goal, my goal when I go to church is I want to grow that network of men who see the world the way I do, so we can attack it together, so we can collude rather than compete. The 10 of us together are going to compete with the world. Now, that's all I have to say about the subject. Brett, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so you're giving some advice. I would give advice to young men in the church as well. So I would say for both young men and women in the church, ignore, avoid, don't participate in the purity conversation. It's not going to be helpful to you. If you're a woman, the purity conversation is going to make you think that you're valuable simply because you have a vagina. If you're a man, it's going to make you think that you're a piece of shit simply because you have a penis. And neither one of those are true. For the young women, I don't know what the solution is.
Women are not valuable at all. They deserve less.
I don't know what the solution is for the women. For the young men, I would say this. I would say that the secular view of sexuality is no more helpful. That view would be just do whatever you want, bang whoever you want, as many as you can. It's what it's all about. I would say you need to be more careful. You need to be wise. You need to be thoughtful. You need to be safe. I would say there's something in between the church's all-out sex is bad purity culture and secularism's all-out everything is good. Find healthy sexuality. Find healthy boundaries for both men and women. But for men, and be careful the women you spend your time with. Be very careful the women you spend your time with. Surround yourself with good men who are focused on the things that Danny's saying, on building themselves up, on getting better, on improving. It doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be success, but just working on themselves. You know, we all have these issues. We all come into the world, come into families that have problems. Find other people, other men who are going to let you express yourself and your emotions that you have, but they're going to support you through that as well. Work on yourself so that you'll be in a position where you can detect who may be a good match for you or not when you get to that point, and hopefully they have done the same work that you have. That would be my advice to the young men in the church.
And let me just add this, like, I always say that I'm a free man. And the reason I say that I'm a free man is because I have people in my corner like Brett, and whatever my weirdo predilections are, either of us, I guess, I know I can call up Brett and be like, I just saw this individual at the gym and they had a nice bum and it turned out to be a dude. Although I will say one time we all left a church, me, you, and this other person, and we got in the car. We all just openly said, did you guys all notice that guy with the grate behind?
I still remember it.
I can imagine it. It's not that I was like, I would have squeezed his buns, but he had a nice bum, and I noticed his nice bum. And anyways, it's neither here nor there. I'm just saying that I feel a sense of openness towards a handful of dudes, and it's not every dude. And so I've been in situations in church where they're like, oh, why don't you open up? Because I know you're a piece of garbage. Right?
Yeah,
because I know that
you're just going to get, crucified for opening up and expressing the thoughts that you have.
Correct. And so I'd always mask it with jokes or whatever. And I was always accused of like not having deep emotions.
Not being serious,
which couldn't be further from the truth. It's that I reserve those deep emotions for the kinds of people who I know are going to hear it objectively and not in the context of how do we push this person towards our church's interpretation of sanctification. And all that's here's all that happens. And here's why on this podcast we talk about scandals. It is simply because pastors and other Christian men who end up in these scandals have no meaningful, real way to express, hey, I'm Ted Haggard. I like boy booty from time to time. And if he had maybe a more authentic place to express that, maybe he wouldn't have pastored two massive churches and lost them, right?
Yeah.
Maybe if Carl Lentz was just like, yo, I want to throw the peep out there, maybe, and he had gone through a phase where he had done that, maybe he wouldn't have broke up a massive church where people apparently had good feelings and thoughts. But that's that. That's our episode on masculinity. And with all of that being said, Brett, it is time. You are canceled.
Danny, I know we say it every episode, but I feel like after this one, I can safely and unequivocally say,
Okay.
you are canceled.
Well, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And join us next time on Church is Canceled.